World War II. Possibly the world's biggest conflict has been seen on the big screen for the past 70 years by audiences who have taken interest and value its historical importance. There have been World War II films since World War II started in 1939, and in today's times with upcoming World War II films. Some World War II films have been credited with their amazing portrayals of the war, the soldiers, and the soldiers' experience. Saving Private Ryan, Letters from Iwo Jima, and Das Boot all express how and what the war was like. Audiences have explored the lives of American, Japanese, and German soldiers through encounters of World War II films, connecting the audiences in one of the world's biggest conflicts. Steven Spielberg. People know him as a director, writer, and producer. He's directed and produced 9 war films, and 6 of them being based on World War II. He's won the Defense Department Civilian Award to director Steven Spielberg Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service for his 1998 film, Saving Private Ryan. The film sparked national awareness of World War II generation's sacrifices. It helped reconnect the American public with nation's men and women in uniform. Captain John Miller takes his men behind enemy lines to find Private James Ryan, whose 3 brothers have been killed in combat. Surrounded by brutal realities of war while searching for Ryan, each man embarks upon a personal journey and discovers their own strength to triumph over an uncertain future with honor, decency, and courage. Saving Private Ryan has been viewed by audiences across the world. Veterans have seen it. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic have viewed it, and they say, "It's an unflinchingly accurate depiction of the confusion and carnage of war, but that very authenticity experts have warned has the potential to trigger long-burned memories in those who have endured combat, be it World War II or Vietnam." A clinical psychologist at West Palm Beach said, "Seeing the movie opens up the floodgates of emotions for many veterans, and the screen becomes an emotional experience. They don't just see it, they feel it." Veterans viewing the film make them relive many memories. Some veterans open up about their experience after watching the film. World War II veteran Thomas Blakey describes his World War II experience that was depicted in the final battle scene of Saving Private Ryan. He shares his experience with tourists at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans and brings them back in time. When the film debuted, veterans saw it and wanted to talk about it. In the words of a veteran, "The film has been a particularly raw experience, touchingly terrible and terribly touching," in the words of one. During the 2 weekends since the film opened out, the Department of Veterans Affairs have increased staffing on its toll-free counseling line to accommodate vets shaken by the film. More than 100 have called, and scores of others have phoned or stopped in during the week at 7 regional offices around the nation. Some of the children of veterans noticed their parents never talked about their experience in the war. Amy Wallace, granddaughter of World War II veterans, said, "My grandfather survived the invasion of Normandy. Now I understand why he's always been so quiet about his experience there, and the 4 Bronze Stars he received for bravery." The violence of Saving Private Ryan's opening sequence is overwhelming. Spielberg's mastery of sound, editing, camera movement, visual storytelling, narrative flow, performance, and color combine to assault the viewer, to place each and every member of the audience directly into combat. Veterans' reactions to this depictions make them relive the horror years from Omaha Beach. Frank L. Davis, a World War II veteran, says, "It felt like I was right there again. It was so real." Suddenly, Davis was 21 again, a sergeant in the 101st Airborne, dodging bullets at near Omaha Beach on D-Day. Many smaller details are fairly accurate, such as the 101st Airborne uniforms and patch, the helmets, the weapons, the vehicles. Most Japanese films produced focus on human tragedy while keeping away from anything that could be constructed as glorifying combat or defending Japan's military adventurism. However, Letters from Iwo Jima, directed by Clint Eastwood, focuses on the combat and also the tragedy of war. Japanese users have appreciated the film for its anti-war message, its sentimental story. Letters from Iwo Jima's lead actor, Ken Watanabe, says that the battle on Iwo Jima is most important in Japan, that the film be a true history. It is an important history. He adds on that the story of Iwo Jima isn't well known in Japan, and stressed that it should be known. "We only worked on Iwo Jima for a couple of days because it's a sacred place, and there are still bombs there and unexploded shells." Veterans have viewed the film and they say, "Old hatreds die slowly, especially in a battle like this, where both sides fought often face to face. They weren't dropping bombs from 5,000 feet or firing Scud missiles. It was very close and very personal." The Japanese soldiers had mothers, fathers, wives, and children waiting for them to come home safely, just as they did. The men said, They felt the same fear and shed the same tears when a buddy died. Audiences whose family members were alive at that time share their experience with the next generation. Noriko Manabe is one of them. After watching Letters from Iwo Jima, he said, "I immediately recalled my mother's childhood memory," she tells over and over. America lived in Japan's food shortage. Her childhood pet was a rabbit. My grandmother had to kill it to provide food for her family. My mother, who refused to touch it at first, but as her hunger overcame her, she ate it, crying. He said he was also taken back by the pristine postcard images that were presented of the soldiers' hometowns. They are supposedly from the cities that have been rendered in rubble by American firebombs, which killed millions of civilians. They wiped out over half the civilian population in 70 cities. World War II remains a subject largely avoided by Japanese films. It is simply cut too close. Practically all Japanese alive then lost someone in the battles or firebombs. Letters from Iwo Jima, however, clearly depict a public collective memory. But what stood out most about the theater audience when Letters opened up in Japan were the spectators who didn't know Eastwood very much or who rarely went to the movies. Yet young and old, they spoke of being sincerely moved by this film, often praising it for such statements as, "This film was a film that Japan should have made." Letters from Iwo Jima had a positive opportunity for spectators in both Japan and America to discover heroes who are largely unknown. One of the main reasons Letters was by and large more favorably received by American spectators was it was unwaveringly presented figures that viewers could intimately relate to. Letters from Iwo Jima, the most esteemed figure is the enemy who dies. Wolfgang Petersen is a German film director and screenwriter. He was nominated for 2 Academy Awards for a 1981 World War II submarine war film, Das Boot. It grossed over $80 million worldwide and received critical acclaim. Das Boot was a book which later moved on to a film in 1981. People say, Das Boot is without a doubt the most realistic and immersive submarine film out there. Up until this film, the submarine movie genre was pretty comfortable, descended into well-worn cliché. This film showed us what life in a submarine during World War II was really like. With the moldy food, foul air, bad weather, and sticky parlor of the crew shown in convincing detail and told from a German point of view. It was filmed with 3 Type VIIC. U-96 models were built for the film at diminishing scales. Audiences who have seen the film regard the film as the best World War II film so far, for its gritty portrayal of the crew in awful living conditions and terror of being hunted down, and not a hero in sight. Outstanding. They say Das Boot is the most atmospheric, authentic, exciting, and best realism war film out there. The director's cut has more in it and is absolutely brilliant. When I watched it, I really got to know the actors' parts good. One of the films that has ever done that to me. It's like fishing. Waiting. When you catch one, it's immense, just like Das Boot. I think the movie Das Boot gives a really good point of view on life of a U-boat. The life on a U-boat was very hard and definitely not easy, and you could see those aspects really good in this long but good and classic film. Some viewers like the Navy have viewed it, and they say, on modern boats, life isn't easy, but compared to the living heck that the German U-boats were, modern submariners have nothing to complain about. People in certain professions don't like to watch films about their professions. Submarine sailors are different. We love to watch every submarine movie out there. Why? Because we can always use a good laugh. For those who don't know, submarine movies are usually absolutely hilarious, except this one. After being in the Navy for 4 years, serving around 350 different men, and being acquainted with further 200 to 300, all of them submariners sailors, I think I can state with absolute certainty that this film is the only submarine film that all submariners take seriously, and that is the highest praise a movie like this can possibly get. Veterans viewed the film and they say, in general, they do like it, and the other aspects of the film, such as the daily life of the men on board and the common duties of the crew. Most believe that was well done. We connect with these films by watching and experiencing them on the big screen. We see how much horror and violence this war was, and we thank our veterans for their service. Teachers teach their students about World War II by letting them watch some films to see how the war was fought. They watch feature films and documentaries inspired by historical events in the United States, including information about their educational value, ratings, and appropriateness for children, and how well they represent the time period covered.
But in the long run, we all felt that we were representing millions of Americans that fought that war in order for us to fight this one on the recreated beaches Normandy.